Hi, everyone. Welcome to Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. I'm Langdon DeMint.
And I'm Julian Taylor.
And welcome to our podcast. Welcome, everyone, to Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. Today, it's not just two bald guys. As you can see, we're here with two of my favorite guests. I've worked a lot with them, helping them in their safety journeys on what they are about to embark upon. We are here with Jess and Miriam from Seize the Day Rowing. It is good having you here.
Thanks so much for having us.
How are you?
Happy to be in Peru.
Bit sunburn.
Yeah, very sunburn.
It seems like it's early to be sunburned. Maybe let's give a little insight into what Seize the Day Rowing is, and then let's talk about what we're about to. What y'all are about to embark upon.
Yeah, so we are going to row about 8,000 miles across the Pacific from Peru to Australia. And the goal is to do it nonstop and unsupported.
And we don't really know how long it's going to take.
Is it something that's been done before? Have people rowed across the Pacific before?
There's very few boats that have done it, which I think is why it's hard to put a number on how long it's going to take, because there's not the sort of tried and tested and backup evidence to say, it'll take this amount of days. So quite a few solos have done it, but the goal is to be the first team to do it unsupported and non-stop.
Wow.
Jules, it's the conversations like this that I have with them, and they know what I'm about to say, that just gets me. Every time it's like a little curveball. We don't know exactly how long it's going to take. And it's that, so I've been helping do a lot of the safety as much as I can, preparedness and thoughts. Really, I'm just bringing things to light that hopefully they've already thought about, plus many more. But it's when they throw those things out there that I'm just like, oh gosh, here we go.
So if you don't know how long it's going to take, how do you plan for kind of basics like food and water and, those kind of things that we need to survive as human beings?
So basically, we are probably going to try and take 200 days worth of food. We don't think it will take that long. We're hoping for about 160 days at sea. But it's just going to be a case of trying to fit as much food on the boat as possible. And our boat's pretty small. It's only 9.5 meters. And most of it's deck space anyway. We've got a cabin on the bow and a cabin on the stern and a lot of lockers on deck. So we're just going to be cramming the boat full of food to see how long we can last at sea.
What is the caloric intake is there a certain number you try to maintain for that?
Yeah, we've been working with our nutritionists. We've been basing off about 60, 70 calories per kilo of body weight. So we're around about just under 5,000 calories a day. But the good thing is, if we're with having the backup of an extra buffer of 20, 30, 40 days food extra, as it gets close to the end, and we know we'll be a bit more safe in the fact that we've got some spare food, we'll probably start eating a bit more anyway, because no matter how hard you try, there probably is always going to be a bit of a calorie deficit. And then also when you're just rowing all day, it's actually quite hard to eat that much, because obviously you don't always have time for it to digest. So you're rowing on sort of like a full stomach, or you're just trying to graze all day or whatever. So we'll probably start eating more as we get towards the end, and all the leftover chocolate and things like that.
How do you stop the chocolate from melting? That's the most important question.
Well, I think it's already melted. Our food has arrived in Peru, but it's sitting in a container in the sunshine, and we can see it, but we can't get to it right now. We're waiting for it to go through customs. So it's just going to be pretty melted, and hopefully we can bring it back to the accommodation, put it in the fridge. And
it might be a bit easier for packing the boat, because we can mold it into shape.
You can just shape it into the different bits of the boat. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the deck hatches do tend to stay quite cold because they're quite close to the water. And obviously the boat's only a certain thickness. So, and the Pacific Ocean is actually a bit colder than the Atlantic Ocean was. So the food should be able to stay quite cold.
One of my questions was what sort of temperature extremes will you see crossing the Pacific?
Well, our weather routers said that it will be between sort of 25 and 35 degrees. quite varied throughout because it is such a long crossing.
You don't have any particularly cold areas then. It's going to be fairly sort of consistent between those numbers then.
No, I mean, unless we're getting drenched by waves, we might get a bit cold, but
it does get
sounds like it's going to be quite hot.
It does get a bit cooler at night, which is nice as well.
Are you getting projections, like weather projections? Has that already started? Where at least a little bit of forecasting out?
Yeah, it's still a bit far away from sort of the rough start point to be able to predict that yet. But we're going to start having regular meetings with our weather router just to kind of keep an eye on what's happening. And then we'll get sort of daily messages, multiple a day, just with the weather updates for the next few days. And we'll sort of see that as they develop. And we'll probably give him a call a few times every so often just to update him as well on what's going on.
And one thing, I feel like we just need to clear the air here. A giant fish swallowed a person in a kayak.
Oh, we saw this. We saw this video.
Yeah, and we've even talked about it. I told you I was going to bring it up.
Is it in the risk assessment, Langdon? Yeah. That's what I want to know.
Well, so we did talk wildlife and sea life, but I don't know that we talked, like totally getting engulfed, like Jonah and the whale or something. So what precautions do we now have in place for this?
Luckily, our boat's a bit bigger than a kayak, so hopefully there aren't any whales big enough. There might be, we don't know.
Another one of those answers, Jules.
Yeah, be right. Be right.
I think it is worth maybe, so we've hit on a few things. You're talking about sunburn. What are some of the, if you had to pick top 3 things from again, we've spoken enough. I'm going to ask you to really think about it, but concerns you have from a safety perspective or from the journey perspective, because it is long. We talked about some things with just fear of, or not fear, but thinking about how even keeping the mental state for that length of time or whatever it is. What are a few of the top things that you're really trying to, how can we prepare as best?
I think one of the major things is probably damage to the boat in some way. On the Atlantic Ocean, the marlins have a habit of striking ocean rowboats and poking holes in them. So that is obviously something we are quite concerned about. So have quite a good repairs kit and have learned a bit about that. I suppose one of the big concerns would be a capsize and not self-right. Then you'd be in a bit of trouble, or getting too much water in the cabin and having like a battery fire, for example. That would be pretty top end of worst thing that could happen out there.
Yeah. And then you've also got the fact that we are such a small boat on the ocean, and all of these bigger container ships can't really see us because their radar reflector goes straight over the top of us. And sometimes they may be on a collision course coming towards us, and we'll have to radio them and say, hey, you've got to move, because we can't move very quickly.
Do you have any other kind of warning signals then for that kind of instance? So if something is big is coming towards you?
So we're on AIS, so they should be able to see our location. If we're really in trouble, we have got flares we can set off, and I think hopefully they would see us at that point. Otherwise, we're just going to be rowing as fast as we can to get out of their way.
Yeah, hopefully they're not asleep in the bridge.
Hopefully, yeah.
And so for a lot of that, and we covered, I know we discussed the wildlife. I don't know that you straight told me that marlins punctured. Thanks once again, another curveball. But thinking about things like that, and I know that you have hired on a former naval safety guy as well, monitoring. Let's discuss a little bit of that as well. So a lot of the things that you're talking about, right? Those real risks that kind of like we always discuss, they're always going to be there. It's just how can we minimize it and know that what's happening right as an expedition. So it's different in that as well. But maybe discuss some of the things that you've put into place to ensure it as safe as possible.
So we have got spares for everything. For example, the water maker, we've got a spare pump in case we can't fix whatever's gone wrong. We have got a brand new water maker, so hopefully nothing should go wrong. If the spare pump fails, we've also got a hand pumping water maker, and we'll also take enough sort of plastic bottles of water as emergency drinking water, which should be enough for the time it would take to get rescued. We've got a boat full of spares for everything, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Anything that breaks, we've got spares for, and hopefully we have got enough. But there's we've done a lot of courses as well. We've done a first aid course. We've done an epoxy resins course. We've done a hydraulics course. We have spent quite a lot of time learning and reading and just going through crisis ops with our safety officer as well. So yeah, our weekends have been packed with, thinking what could go wrong and how could we fix it, or how do we prevent this from happening?
Mm-hmm. And we'll do an inspection once we've got the boat through customs and got all the equipment. We'll do an inspection with the safety officer, go through everything and just triple check everything's in proper working order. And we'll do some sea trials as well before we go out and just test all the bits of equipment, finish off like a power management plan. We've got a telemed service, so we've got a doctor on call 24/7 and sort of like a process around that as well. And then obviously our weather router as well. We'll be in comms with him daily at least. And then the land team will all be in comms with each other, monitoring us. We've got about 3 different methods of tracking us, I think. So being watched constantly.
So what's the boat actually made of?
So it's mostly made of fiberglass. And there's certain areas of the boat where there's a bit more GRP. For example, where the rudder sits on, just so there's a bit more protection. But yeah, it's how much does it weigh without anything in? I think it's about 900 kilos, completely empty. But when we've put the amount of food and equipment on, it's probably going to be a bit more than that.
Chocolate biscuits weigh a lot, don't they?
I think we may have forgotten to pack chocolate biscuits.
We've got biscuits and we've got a load of chocolates, but the problem is when we were making all the food, we obviously with an expedition of this length and the amount of food we need to pack, we had to make some sacrifices. So we've got no crisps, sadly.
No crisps. Oh,
no ice cream. I don't know what if you told me I couldn't have ice cream for 180 days.
Langdon couldn't go 160 days without ice cream. He would that would be him done.
I can't go 6 days. I would just walk overboard. Like, just take me. I'm done.
I think that might be the first thing we decide to eat when we get on land.
Is it a self-righting boat then?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So how does that work? How does a boat right itself?
Basically, all of the weight is in the bottom of the boat. So we've got cabins which, are a bit higher. We can sit up in the cabins a bit higher than our head, and that space is all completely empty. And so the boat does just sort of roll over from the weight of everything that's strapped down in the bottom. So we do have to make sure that everything is completely strapped down. There's not things sort of rolling around in the cabin that are going to end up sort of in the ceiling when you're upside down, which would stop you from self-righting.
Mm-hmm. And it's also all sort of compartmentalized, so each hatch doesn't link to the other. So, for example, if you did get a marlin strike through one hatch, then there's not going to be water leaking into the whole, like all the other hatches, and causing like more problems with that potential self-righting capability, or just in general of the boat. I
was down in the pits of a sailing boat the other day repainting it, so I know all about that because I was I was on a clipper doing some repainting. So yeah,
we've also got a bit of painting to do. As soon as we've got access to our boat, we're going to sand the hull and anti-foul it, just so that we don't get a load of growth on the bottom.
You don't want to be lugging any more weight than you have to, do you? And have any more drag than you need. Yeah.
No, definitely not. And also quite a lot of sharks near the coast of Australia. So hopefully if we get it anti-foul as best as possible, then we don't have to get in and clean it as much and risk any nips.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that. I've got a daughter who lives in Sydney and she keeps telling me about how she's going surfing, and I kind of like that. It's not something you want to hear as a dad, really. So yeah.
That sounds more dangerous than what we're doing. There's so many sharks around there.
What's the rowing routine then? That's what I'm really interested in, because obviously you've got to maintain your pace and keep going. But you need to rest as well. So how do you manage that? Is there always somebody rowing, or will you take breaks together?
Yeah, it's all about keeping the momentum up of the boat, obviously, because it is such a big, heavy boat. Just keep it ticking along. So we'll probably do mainly 2 hours on, 2 hours off. Having said that, that's going to be very hard for 24 hours a day for potentially 6 months. But depending on the conditions, there might be some times where actually us being on the oars might act as a break. In certain conditions, you can actually kind of slow the boat down a bit. So there might be opportunities then to kind of take a bit of a rest together and have like a long sleep. Or for example, if it's rough conditions or the wind's in the wrong direction, we might put the parachute anchor, which is essentially a big parachute, acts as a sea anchor and helps stabilize your position a little bit. So if we're on para anchor, then we'd get a bit of a longer rest together. The problem is whoever gets the longer rest, if we were both on a shift pattern, means that somebody's got to row longer. So if you do longer than 2 on, 2 off at night, it's very hard to stay awake for a lot longer than 2 hours when it's pitch black and quite sleep deprived.
I don't recall what we talked about. I know that was early on. What is the length of time that you have to row throughout the night as well? Are you allotting for more true night break period, or is that expectation row as well?
At the moment, if we do go for the routine of 2 hours on, 2 hours off, it will run through the whole night, and it is a lot easier to get more of your sleep at night because it will be a bit cooler. But we'll still get the same sort of rest periods during the day, which don't always get used for sleep. It will be a lot of maintenance of the boat, washing yourself, your clothes, eating. So yeah, it's kind of an all-night cycle, all day, all night.
And I've got loads of questions here because it's just really fascinating. How do you train to row across the Pacific? Because it's not somewhere you can go to Runners World and get a training program, is it? What sort of training have you done to prepare for this?
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one because I think half the aspect is you can't replicate what you're going to get out at sea. You can't do sort of 10 days of 2 on, 2 off. I mean, well, you could, but nobody gets that much spare time off work. So it's a lot of strength and conditioning work in the gym and just making our bodies as resilient as possible. A lot of long hours on the rowing machine, and then during the summer it was just getting in the boat as much as possible. I guess the Atlantic was probably our big training practice for this one, which has definitely come in handy because I think before we'd done our Atlantic rows, there was that element of you don't know how you're going to react in a lot of these situations because you can't put yourself in these situations while you're training. So ocean rowing is one of those unique sports. Before you do your first ocean crossing, a lot of people said, well, the only way to sort of train is to do it in a way, and just get in and experience it.
And are the sort of cohorts of ocean rowers then are the teams you compete against in doing this kind of thing?
So interestingly, there is a boys team who are doing the same route, leaving from the same location, and they're flying out here in, I think, a week's time now.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't realize there was another team doing this. We sort of found out through word of mouth when we were in La Gomera watching the start of the Atlantic rowing race. It was a year ago or 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a trio, 3 brothers. And so we're all sort of, I think we'll probably all leave at the same time, but it is quite rare for a crossing sort of this long for there to be people doing it at the same time and going for the same records. So
it's quite nice to know we're not the only sort of nutty ones, because I think even people in the ocean rowing community have said we're a bit nuts, which I think is a different bar.
The thing is, with 3 brothers, they're going to fail miserably because they're just going to end up arguing, aren't they? So it's all going to go miserably wrong.
Yeah, who knows? But,
no, they're really nice, and we've actually been working together a bit on the customs side a bit. It is a bit tricky with Peru, just to try and help each other, like push get the food shipments and stuff through. So yeah, it will actually be nice. We'll have to swap sat phone numbers, and then we can call each other up mid-ocean and be like, "Oh, are you having a good time? Or are you miserable?" And then just compare. No, it's nice. I think the good thing about the Atlantic race was, even though you couldn't see the other boats, you knew you weren't the only one in it. I think that will be quite nice about having another team doing it, is we'll know we won't feel completely alone out there.
Are they Brits as well then?
Yeah, they're from Scotland.
The Brits do tend to breed the particularly nutty people, don't they? Who love to do these crazy kind of things. So.
I like to think we're quite normal, but apparently not.
So both of you, for listeners might not know, both of you have done the Atlantic. What is I guess for this, is there anything that you're foreseeing outside of it just being excessively longer?
Well, it's interesting because I think we had both already ran separate campaigns for our Atlantic rows. Mims rowed the Atlantic solo, and I did it as a team of 4 girls. And I think we thought that the whole campaign might be a bit easier this time round because we'd done it before. We knew we had an idea of what we needed to get done, but it's been a lot harder not doing it with an organized race. So, it's been having to choose where to start from and doing even more research on that kind of thing, and all of the shipping problems that we've had. And it's definitely been quite tricky, but we've learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to being on the ocean, I think you can never really you can't assume you can beat Mother Nature. You've got to have a lot of respect for the ocean. So it's not, I think we were very conscious coming into this. We almost treat it like we've not done it before, and just prepare in that same way, because at the end of the day, it is a different ocean, and there will be sort of different weather patterns and weather systems. But we've done one ocean, but it doesn't mean we're by any means experts. So it's we've taken it back to square one and try and sort of go back to basics and sort of relearn everything again, just to make sure we're not missing any extra things and just sort of cover all bases as well.
Oceans can be really scary things, can't they? When you think about some of the sort of waves and what I suppose in terms of the route, where does the route actually take you then? Because I know it's just a big ocean, but where does it sort of take you near to?
So we are almost going in a straight line across. We're probably going to be doing lots of loop-the-loops, being blown in all sorts of directions with the wind. But we are trying to pick up currents to give us a bit more of a boost along the way. The idea is that we do stay clear of any of the islands along the way, just because they are hazardous. And a lot of them in the South Pacific aren't lit up, so we won't be able to see them very easily unless we're checking the charts.
Mm-hmm. I think off the start, we'll probably end up curving up a little bit just because of the way the typical winds and currents work, and then sort of end up coming back down in a more of a straight line as we head towards sort of Sydney, Brisbane area. Good thing is it's quite a big east coast to hit, so if we miss Australia, then we've done something very wrong.
And where is your finishing point? Where are you aiming to finish?
We'd really love to finish in Sydney Harbour. That would be the end goal. But
that'd be amazing.
It's going to be Mother Nature that decides. So we'll have more of an idea 1,000 miles out from land, but then 500 miles out from land, we'll really be able to set the target, because it might end up that we get some weather system, and to come down to Sydney might end up a lot more miles and a lot more hassle than it's worth. So it's sort of to be determined.
Amazing. And is the sort of, in terms of going from South America to Australia rather than the other way around, is that because of currents and winds?
The reason we've chosen this spot is because we should be able to get into a strong current quite quickly. The wind is going to be very much beam on, so side on, for the first 1,000 miles or so. So it might be quite a tricky push getting away from land.
Might get a bit soggy.
Yeah.
So from when is the kickoff day again?
Around the 1st of April. The good thing about it being an independent and not part of an organisation is we can wait and choose the best weather window. So yeah, once the boat's through customs, we'll just get everything done as quickly as possible, and then it'll just be a waiting game from then.
As you have less than a month, assumingly, Right. How are you? You're in Peru now. So everything, I've just known you for, I guess we've been talking for what, maybe a year-ish or a little, whatever. How is it now that it's becoming more real? Everything's there.
You know what? I'm just so ready to get out there and live a simple life again. I think what we both loved from the Atlantic Rose was just sort of the simplicity of being out there, and you do tend to sort of think a bit differently, and when things are stripped back, and you do appreciate things a lot more. So I'm just very excited to get out there. Kind of want to throw my phone in the ocean at this point and laptop and get away from the admin.
No social media.
Yeah, a dream, honestly, and get away from all the organisational tasks and, get customs and everything like that sorted, and then just head out.
I think it will just feel like a massive relief after. I mean, we've probably spent over a year and a half preparing, and it's been flat out early in the mornings before work, in the evenings, up past midnight. Every single weekend has been devoted to, preparing for this expedition. So I think once we've got our boat through customs and it's in the water, it's just going to be a massive relief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, obviously I do nothing in comparison to you, but I do sort of lots of organised bike races and runs and things. And it's even those, it's the same. It's the hanging around. You just want to get going and get on with it. Yeah.
For sure.
What's the most exciting thing then? What's most exciting you about doing it?
I love all the wildlife and a night sky, and I think it's just that feeling you get when you're out there. And sometimes you just get out of your cabin and you get on your oars and you think, oh, I get to do this, and it's quite special. And I think we've both said you do tend to think a lot more profoundly out there. I don't know whether it's the sleep deprivation or just how straight back things are. So things just do feel a lot more special. And then, you could see a whale or a shark or something in the natural habitat, and it is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, you really couldn't be closer to the wildlife if you tried. I mean, our rowing boat's only a foot above the water, so we could reach it and touch them if we wanted
very
to.
Close, yeah. I went up the Amazon last year. I've got two daughters who both live abroad, and the other one lives in Colombia. So we went to Colombia last year and went up the Amazon, and we on this little boat in the Amazon, and there were pink dolphins, and it's just the most amazing sight. So I can imagine when you're out there, and if there are whales, sharks, dolphins, you're just going to see some amazing sights.
Flying fish. So you can get flying fish, but it's not very fun when you get slapped in the face at 3 a.m. by wet fish. So
you wake up in the morning, you come out on deck and the sun's up and there's just dead fish everywhere.
Lunch has been provided.
you don't want to eat these.
It's just bones. Piles of bones.
I got a friend did the Clipper race first leg of the Clipper last year, which was from UK across to South America. And he said the same thing. He said the flying fish are actually quite scary. When if the boat's moving at any kind of speed and those things are hitting you, they can hit you with a real thump. So, yeah.
They just come out of nowhere. Hopefully we will do a bit of fishing as well. We have got some fishing gear. So who knows, we may catch some tuna or mahi-mahi. And I'm sure that will be a massive treat after eating
fresh
dehydrated food for so long.
I bet it will be. Yeah. What's the most scary thing then? I've asked you about the most exciting. What's the most scary thing?
Originally, I was saying getting to the start line. The prospect of not managing to get everything sorted to be able to do it. I think we're nearly there. It's within touching distance. So I think, for me, things that are very much out of your control, like we already talked about, like a container ship colliding with you at sea because they're not listening to you on the radio or they can't see your flares. So that's probably something that sticks in my head.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just something happening that would mean you couldn't complete it for whatever reason. I think we've put that much effort into it. But obviously we'll do everything within our control, and there's some things that just aren't. But yeah, I think that's one of the frustrations is you can't control everything, and you might not be able to go in the right direction, but that's because of the wind, and it's not something you can do. But Not something you can do anything about. But I think there's a lot of, and then the fear, I think you almost have more fear before you go because it's the anticipation and the what if, and then when you get out there, you settle and you do end up just with things as they come up. But there were sometimes, as I remember from the Atlantic, when you get the weather forecast and you knew it was going to be sort of quite big waves and big conditions, and you get that a few days in advance, and you would sort of feel a bit of a anxious, like, this is coming the day before. So you would have a little bit of fear with that, but trying not to sort of dwell on those things too much. And I mean, we'll have the drills and we'll go through the crisis ops and stuff. And I think in the moment you've just got to remind yourself that you've sort of done the planning and done the preparation, and you've got the system in place. So we try and just think of things logically rather than emotionally.
You can almost waste too much energy, can't you, worrying about things before they happen and escalating them almost in your mind before they actually happen. It's to almost deal with it as it arrives.
Yeah, for sure. I think as humans, you can sort of be your own worst enemy sometimes, can't you? And it's not always the easiest thing, but you're right there.
Well, and I think that's, I think about all the discussions we had, and that's what, Jules, I tried to reiterate was just prepared. Be as prepared as possible. This is a different type, quote unquote, job. It's an expedition. So, there's obviously risk that are present. Is that, would you say from all that, is it if you have a fear that sticks in the back of your head, is it just the mental aspect of everything that has to go into this? Just because there's so many different levels, whether things that are totally controllable and uncontrollable.
Yeah, I think so. It is definitely a lot of mental, like it is definitely more mental than physical, this challenge. I think it's and fear is a good thing as well. I think there's that illusion of like you try not to be scared, but actually I think if we weren't scared, you would probably be a lot more concerned about us because you'd be like, you wouldn't know what you were getting yourself in for. So I guess it's just channeling that fear as well. And it can be, I think in the moment, remind yourself that actually it is a useful tool for keeping yourself safe. But and I think it's just for us accepting that there are going to be times when we are scared, and coming up with like a process and a method to deal with that when we are, because it is going to be inevitable.
How are you going to manage if y'all get into a fight?
I was going to ask, because me and you have icks with each other. Have you two got icks with each other where actually you've got to manage am I going to irritate somebody?
We've been fine so far, but I think, you don't know what's going to happen out there, and you do get sleep deprived, and there might be little things that annoy you, but you probably forget about it on your next shift. You kind of treat a 2-hour shift like a day pretty much, and you wake up again, it's a new day, you can start again. We're also probably not going to have enough energy to argue with each other. We're both quite relaxed as well.
We also just don't like arguing.
No.
And I think we're quite, a good thing about us too is we're low drama people, so we always try and find solutions and not problems. Having said that, I mean, so it is probably inevitable. I hope we don't have any problems with each other, but I think it's as well having that internal thought process of thinking, okay, do I need to shut up or do I need to speak up? Because it might be, hang on, is this an internal problem? And am I annoyed because I'm tired or I'm hungry or I miss home or I'm scared about this? Because I think a lot of frustrations come out because of something that's probably happening internally rather than something that somebody else is doing. So I think it's that understanding of how we're both doing and feeling, and we'll have daily check-ins and like a sort of daily meeting, so to speak, and sort of talk through anything's there and any issues, and also just how we're feeling, because if one of us is in the mood one day, it's probably because of something else happening. But then also just recognizing how each other works when we're tired and stressed, because if somebody, one of us might just need a bit of a quiet moment and somebody might be yapping on. So it's knowing how the other person works as well, so we can avoid those situations.
Yeah, you almost need to treat it like a bit like email, don't you? So you've got a bit of a drafts box where you can just I'll put it in there and I'll come back to it in an hour and see if I still need to talk about this or not. So, yeah.
Jess, go to the other side of the boat.
Yeah.
I can still see you. No.
Yeah, you can't run away from your problems on the boat.
You can't. It's good to hear you both low drama, though, because that could be a recipe for disaster, couldn't it? You've got two high drama people in a boat. So, sorry, Jess, I jumped over you then.
Both pretty chilled, but we've actually got like a mission statement as well, and we wear it on bracelets around our wrists. So our mission statement is for the good of the team, the speed of the boat, and the joy of the journey. So I think, keeping that on at all times and just remembering that, we've got the same goal.
Yeah, and I think just if we have a conflict or even just are indecisive about what we do, we can just refer back to that mission statement and be like, right, does it tick off these things? Is this action working towards making that mission statement work? And we find that quite helpful, don't we, when we're making decisions.
Can I ask how did you get into, because you've obviously done the Atlantic rows, how did you get into this in the first place? How did you get into ocean rowing?
It kind of happened by accident. So I'd loosely known about ocean rowing for a few years, but was too young to sort of think of it as a possibility and didn't know masses about it. And then when I went to university, I learned to row. And in my second year, I was loosely following a local team doing it, and jokingly said to some of my teammates at the rowing club, thinking it was a fantastic idea, does anybody want to row an ocean with me? And everyone was like, no, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. And I was like, and then I went home and I thought about it some more. I was like, I've got to do this because I'm going to regret not doing it. And it just kind of spiraled a little bit from there.
And then I guess on my side, I've known about the Atlantic rowing race for quite a while. My dad took part with my godfather as a pair in 2005 in the same race as Ben Fogle and James Cracknell. And so I've sort of known about it for a while and then went to work on super yachts. And I spent a lot of time working in the Caribbean, and all of the boats would finish the race every year in Antigua, and I'd always watch them all coming in. And it was only a matter of time, really, until I signed up.
So it's a complete change, isn't it, from super yachts to being in a rowing boat? Yeah.
There's similarities, but yeah, it's quite different. It's not so luxurious.
Just wanted to see how the other half lived.
Yeah.
And where can people sort of follow your journey or follow what's going on?
Yeah, so they can follow on our website. It's www.seasadayoceanrowing.com. So that's SEAS, pardon the pun. And that's got the links to all our social media channels. We'll have updates on Instagram and Facebook and some blogs and bits and pieces. And we'll have a tracker on the website that'll come live sort of probably a few days before we start. So people will be able to track our progress and sort of watch our little boat going across the Pacific in quite small increments.
It's absolutely amazing. I think it's going to be incredible. And yeah, I can't wait to get you back on to hear about it at the end. I think that's what I was going to suggest, Langdon, that maybe we do an outside broadcast and we go and meet them at the finishing line in Sydney. I think that might be a good idea.
Well, the problem is we don't know when it's going to be, as you heard. That's the issue.
We might have to spend a few weeks in Australia and just wait to find out where they're going to land. But yeah.
And then we have to figure out where they're going to land. So we might not be in Sydney. We could be in Brisbane. We could be in New Zealand. Who knows?
Yeah. That's good. Hopefully not New Zealand, I would suggest. So
yeah. Maybe Fiji.
Yeah. That would be good.
But I do think that'd be great. Hopefully, by the time you get back and everything, we'd love to have you back on to discuss the journey.
Yeah, for sure. We can tell you about all the things that have gone wrong.
But we kind of plan for it, right? So there you go.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic to go through everything with you throughout the year, and you've been a massive help with all of our crisis operation plans and just, thinking of all of the things that could possibly go wrong that we try and prevent from happening. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I very much appreciate it. Hopefully you're not just saying that. There's things I tried to help because my experience was limited. So, Jules, you should have been on some of the early calls. Anything you could imagine, I was just throwing out there. And then we still missed we talked a lot of wildlife, but how did we miss I feel like someone
you missed the marlin.
Well, I don't think we missed it. I think someone just withheld information because that's all I'm saying.
I thought we talked
Wasn't
about
you,
them.
Jess?
Maybe we're just trying not to jinx it.
That's fair.
I was going to say, I'm just really impressed, Langdon, to hear the words massive help and your name in the same sentences. That's the first for me. So
It's the little things, Jules.
Yeah.
It's the little things.
all the very best luck in the world. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. Like I said, can't wait to hear more. Thank you for coming on, and we will keep promoting it as you're going sort of through the journey.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate it. I'm going to do a spin this time. So for listeners, for all you out there, we hope that you have enjoyed the show. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast today. And if you'd like to learn more, please check out their website. We'll ensure that it's posted to all the channels as well so that you are able to follow. To Jess, Miriam, I hope that you watch each other's back while you're out there. We'll try to watch your back. We'll touch base with those who are monitoring, see the best we can. But for everyone else, stay healthy, stay safe, and watch each other's back out there. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you stream your podcast, or you can visit us at evotix.com.
And if you've liked today's podcast or you found some value from it, we'd really appreciate it if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review or a rating. It really means a lot to us. Thank you.